So what happens to your car lease when you file bankruptcy? Well, it depends on what you want to happen. In a Chapter 7 case, you list the lease in Schedule G, and you check a box that says you want to assume the lease or reject the lease. This doesn't obligate you to keep it at this point, but it lets the lessor, or the company that owns the car, know what you want to do with the property. The Chapter 7 trustee doesn't care. This is going to be between you and the lessor. The lessor will then send you a lease assumption agreement, which is a one-page document. If you sign your name on it, you are now obligated to keep the lease. Once you sign that and send it back to them, there's no getting out of it. You can't change your mind and suddenly decide to surrender the vehicle the next day. When you sign that lease assumption agreement in Chapter 7, you are stuck with the lease. Now, in a Chapter 13, it gets a little more complicated. In a Chapter 13, you list the lease and check a box that say you want to assume the lease, and then you list it in your Chapter 13 plan to make payments on it each month. The problem is the Chapter 13 trustee gets involved. If they feel like the lease terms aren't fair, like you're paying $500 a month for a 2001 Chevy Cavalier, the trustee is going to say those terms aren't fair. You should not assume this lease, and they will object to it. Or if you're trying to lease an Escalade for $800 a month and you're paying no money to your creditors, the trustee will say this isn't really fair. They don't need an $800 a month Escalade when they pay their creditors nothing. Why don't they get something more reasonable and reject this lease and get something else? So in a Chapter 7, you check a box, you assume the lease, keep making payments. In a Chapter 13, it's more complicated. If it's a bad lease, the trustee will let you know, and they will not want you to keep that lease. It also gets a little messier in a Chapter 13. When you finish paying off that lease, the Chapter 13 trustee is going to say, oh, you finished paying off the lease at year 3 of the plan, but your plan lasts for 5 years. Why don't you contribute that lease money to your creditors for the next 2 years just to pay everyone a little bit extra? So leases in Chapter 13s, they do mix, but they do not mix very well. It's kind of like oil and water. The best bet is to buy something for cash or finance something, list it in your 13, and make payments on it through the Chapter 13. But it really comes down to you. If you have that leased vehicle, yes, you can keep it in a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. Thanks.